In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
About 10 days ago, I arrived in Atlanta for the biennial of the National Association of Episcopal Schools. The first morning I was there, I was watching the news when I heard about a shooting in Thousand Oaks, California. Of course, I was shocked and saddened and struck with concern for this whole community, for the grieving and traumatized, for Thousand Oaks, for the Conejo Valley, and for the family of Epiphany. And then on Friday morning, I began to hear about the fire in Oak Park and surrounding areas. This all seemed, as being that far away, something so unreal, especially in conjunction with the shooting and deaths at the borderline. It almost seemed like an apocalypse, a gathering storm of trauma in the natural world, as well in the realm of human mental illness and inexplicable violence. Today's gospel reading from Mark 13 is in the genre of biblical apocalyptic. And one of the discussions among scholars regarding this passage and the entire chapter 13 is whether, like much biblical apocalyptic, it is referring to events that are yet to come or to events that have already happened. Many scholars believe that this particular passage from Mark presupposes a knowledge of the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, as well as the persecution of the disciples and their need to defend their faith in Jesus at great personal cost. We also understand the Gospel of Mark to be written in a time of challenge for Christians in general. In the Gospel reading for today, the disciples ask Jesus for a sign related to the destruction of the temple. They want to know when all this will take place. And Jesus tells them that things will be happening, that there will be earthquakes and famines and wars, but that the end is still to come. And then he tells them, do not be alarmed. My sister and I both arrived on the cusp of spiritual development as young adults at about the same time. It was during the early 1970s, and it was a time where there was a lot of interest in biblical apocalyptic literature, which in some circles is also referred to as end-time prophecy. My sister Cheryl would tell me all these things that she was reading that predicted that the end of the world would come soon based on scriptural references. And I was probably the patronizing former English major when I said that these things were interesting but metaphorical. There is no doubt metaphor among apocalyptic literature, but my literary analysis was probably more based on my own anxiety that there might be some truth here and that I was not ready to die yet. So I just really didn't want to hear this stuff. But what we seem to be learning in these apocalyptic passages is that God is working both in the cosmic realm and in the human material realm. And as one commentator has said, and it is the same God working in both. Even our own liturgy bears this out, this cosmic realm within which Christ will return to the world. In the Eucharistic prayer, we say, Christ has died, Christ is risen, Christ will come again. There is a future orientation to our faith that affirms that we are moving towards some culmination. And as one commentator, Henry Langneck, writes about today's particular passage, he says, are we talking about the cosmic end of all things, when the sun burns up billions of years from now, and whether or not there will even be humans here to see it? Or are we speaking of the end of Earth's ability to sustain human life, whether through Armageddon, natural cataclysm, or human mismanagement? Or are we talking about the end of a certain cultural way of life, for instance, free market capitalism, mainline denominationalism, or Western-style democracy? Or are we talking about the Judgment Day? Our ability to know the details or to figure out the signs of these things is limited. At the end of this chapter, Jesus tells us no one knows the day or the time. And I think we can also say that no one knows the shape of things to come. But we can trust that our God is at work in all of this. And as the old-time gospel chorus goes, I know not what the future holds, but I know who holds the future. It's a secret known only to him. We can't know everything, but I do believe that in God we can trust everything. This is the thread that runs through our lives now and in the time and life to come, for Jesus tells us, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. What we also learn from this passage is that our central concern as Christians is to proclaim the gospel and keep the faith, regardless of what's going on in the world. Jesus warns the disciples that many will come and try to lead them astray, but that the path of kingdom activity continues. The world ruptures with wars and famines and natural disasters and earthquakes and with fires. But our call is to stay the distance. And in the midst of all of this, Jesus counsels us, do not be alarmed. His words do not say that we should not resist evil or try to avert disaster. Instead, I interpret do not be alarmed, especially in this context, to be words of caution and comfort, realistic advice for difficult and frightening times, and I would say times that this community has gone through in the past 10 days. When Jesus elsewhere tells us, I will never leave you or forsake you, I think we can take him at his word and take that word into our hearts. It is that knowledge of Jesus' constancy that allows us to be present in the face of cataclysm and loss, and to experience distress and grief, but perhaps not alarm. For alarm challenges our whole spiritual and emotional ecosystem. Alarm comes from a feeling that the center cannot hold, or that the foundation is unstable. Yet we are the houses built on solid rock, as the Gospel of Matthew describes. We are the spiritual houses that weather the storm and maintain our foundation. We may be battered, frightened, but not alarmed, because we have spiritual resilience in the groundedness of our faith and in the faithfulness of God. The center will hold. The center is secure. Amen.